Good evening, folks, and welcome to a fine, luxurious evening on Alien Addict. Yes, I'm finally out of the living room. My wife kicked me out, and now I just live in a little bed sit, but it's fine. It's an alien bed sit, and I'm happy as Larry. Without further ado, Eisenberg.
Howdy.
Is it Eisenberg, Walter White?
You're going for Heisenberg, but
Heisenberg, that's
right.
it.
He was like bald because he was dying though, Ollie. So not ideal as a comparison.
Well, you don't look like you're dying. You look great. Speaking of great, Miami Vice's very best. Tupa, how you doing, lad?
We're here. Doing good.
Looking dashing.
It's always the glasses.
I would like to point out that the UFO community has not let itself down, as this is the second comment in the chat.
Yes, absolutely. And you know what? You just reminded us. If you want to buy a T-shirt, the links are in the description. People, get yourself down there because these have till the end. This one's here to stay. This one.
I like that one.
This one.
Beautiful.
This one.
Badass.
And this one have literally a month left.
Yeah.
I love it how Tupa went quiet on the last one.
I like the last one too. Because you have to read it and you're like, but.
And the funny thing is, I think Flat Earth's prominent enough now that we all know someone we could probably buy one for.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It has seeped through all of internet. And there's people in every circle now who are convinced this mother is flat, dude. It's like, okay.
Well, it's you spoke a little bit last night with Sabrel about the Earth being flat. He's not a flat earther.
We touched on it in the interview. It was good. Like he I don't want to give too much of the interview away, but he hit kind of what I think of it as well. That maybe it's an I don't know if you guys have heard of like the bullshit hypothesis, which is essentially that all conspiracy theories are essentially government. Like conspiracy theory itself is a conspiracy theory, and it's every conspiracy theory has been invented by the government just to keep people busy. And I think that might be a flat Earth thing. I think it might just be one of the conspiracy theories that's been put out there to keep people busy and stop them doing like anything. Well, don't want to say worthwhile because anything anti-establishment I think is worthwhile.
Absolutely,
at its core. But yeah, there's got to be a reason that it rose to such prominence, because as all of us know as content creators, you don't get through the algorithm unless the algorithm wants you to get through.
Well, that's it, and that show's coming out Saturday. This Saturday?
It's Saturday, I think so. My birthday.
Yep.
My birthday.
Barsabrel with Lee Stevens. It's a banger, people. I watched it while building a wardrobe today. But yeah, what's been going on in the UFO world? You are
You're
muted,
muted.
my lad.
Good catch. UFO land is always popping off. I mean, there's always something going on. Pretty interesting week. There have been, some updates, some statements. The narrative is kind of turning with the mummies. It's starting to like catch more mainstream attention. We got people like Gary Nolan and his mouthpiece Matt Ford and the Good Trouble Show. They're picking it up. They're going through some of these scientists. They're getting them on as guests, and so that's interesting. Allowing, I guess, the people who were on the fence about it to kind of engage with the mummy story a little bit more fully without being super paranoid that they're being taken for a ride. That's been very interesting.
Has Gary Nolan got his hands on that?
Yeah,
mummy yet? He has.
Yeah, I think he actually. I'm not sure, but I think he was in South America looking at him. I'm not sure. And I know someone who knows Nolan who told me when the DNA got pulled, because I shared the website with this person. I won't say who it is yet, but I shared a website with a person who is closer with this kind of inner circle when it was published. Like I think it was back in 2019 or even 2020, and they said that they were going to send off what the website had listed as the DNA, like the genetic results or whatever. That they were going to look at those and send them off to someone who this person knew, who would have a the education to determine what they were looking at as far as the code or whatever. And after that, dead silence. So my impression of it was that they actually found something, and then I've just been kind of keeping it on the back burner for a while until I guess 4 years later, where we finally have more mainstream traction.
This is crazy because I remember everybody laughing with these mummies, and between the three of us in this room, I know we've always kept, and I know you have too. You've kept kind of like a level head when it comes to, let the chips fall where they may. Maybe there is something to this, because the X-rays were incredible.
X-rays were wild, yeah.
Like
so complete,
Yeah.
There's also another part with them when it comes to those mummies, when you look at them, they look so ridiculous. Like if you were going to fake something and someone like pulled the cover off that and said, right, Jaime, this is what we're going with, you'd laugh them out of the room. It's like, no, we can't get away with this. Everyone's going to look at that and go, it's paper mache alien. Like, what are you doing? Like, so the fact they look so ridiculous, like, it's Elon Musk, isn't it? It's real because it looks so fake.
Yes. That's how I feel. I mean, I was, I'm always scouring the internet for funny, interesting theories, conspiracies, since, we all do it. And it was, 2019 again when I discovered that story, and they were bringing these bodies out, and they looked exactly like they look now, right? There was different types of them. There was a more humanoid one. There was a smaller one. They all looked like paper mache. And I did laugh when I first saw them, like how ridiculous these are the dumbest things I've ever seen. And then, I was seeing them from a foreign news thing too, so it was even more removed. Like I feel like I didn't have to even think twice about it. So I wrote it off, and then it was months and months later that I was watching it must have been Zahi Hawass or someone pulling a mummy out of a tomb with a team, and in Egypt. And when they did, they had the mummy, and it looked exactly like the Nazca mummies. When I say that, I mean like the elements of the Nazca mummies that made me convinced that it was a paper mache doll was actually present in the Egyptian mummies. The weird like eyelids, the lips, like the weird powder coating. It looked, and then I thought to myself, holy shit, if these real Egyptian mummies look identical in their fakeness, then I should go back and just take a look at these alien mummies that were found in Peru. So I do. I go back, I Google it, and there's a website. Click the website, and now I'm looking at 3D X-rays, and I'm like, oh, this is different. And it really confirmed my concern. There's like a bee flying around here. It really confirmed like what I was what I was suspecting, which is that, hey, this is a legit thing. And so, I'm from Oregon, and up here we have like the alligator man. I don't know if you've ever seen that, like on bumper stickers. It's like a centaur, but it's an alligator body with a human torso. And that was put together with wire and paper mache and different bones. And so I figured the X-rays would clearly show, the paper mache, the wiring and all that other stuff. And they didn't. They showed bone, and they showed blood vessels and arteries and muscle tissue and eggs. And I'm just like, okay, this is way different. So again, I just stored it away and then just let it kind of linger. And then, I would follow the story if it came up. And then eventually I was talking to an experiencer who had a very interesting like daytime experience that they were like fluid for, like they were completely lucid. And their description of the alien beings intrigued me, because he saw beings coming out of a portal in his bedroom, and they came out and they like moved around his room, and he described them as very small, right? They were smaller than people. They weren't even as big as like the gray aliens, he said, that the people talk about. They were a little bit smaller, more frail, but that they looked like they were made by like Apple. Like they had these weird kind of like exoskeleton suits on. Cool. So I'm actually taking notes while I'm talking, because I want to draw these things. I want to recreate them. And he's giving me a description. I get down to the hands and how many fingers they had. He said they had 3 fingers. They didn't have any thumbs. And immediately I go, I've only seen one other thing like that. Right? So I go, tell me more. And the experiencer goes on to tell me that from their chest appeared a hologram, and from their wrist too. And then I thought, holy crap, the mummies have this weird metallic thing on their chest, and some of them have one on their wrist. And I'm like, okay, this is a trip. So he tells me the whole story. I draw these things out, and I go, okay, now I want to tell you something, but I want you to know that I don't know what's going on here. I just happened to come across this news story, and I want to show you what I found, because the description you gave me of your beings, they sound exactly like this thing, like way too similar, too many features. So he goes, okay. So I screen share. I think we were Skyping at the time, and I screen share, and I have the alien mummy, them up, and this guy's face turned white, like turned absolutely white. His jaw was on the floor. He was like, "That's them. That's them." And I'm like, well, what do you mean? He goes, that's the things that I saw. Only like those things look like they're natural. They look like they're biological. The things I saw, he said, were more like, they were like androids or something. They were like part artificial. Like they would look like these mummies designed by Steve Jobs. And I was like, okay, that's crazy. So same fingers, same size, same behavior, not behavior, but same like the way he said they moved was very weird. And that, you have the anatomy of these beings. So yeah, so many similarities that it was, after that, I kept it really low key on it. I'm not going to blow the experiencer spot up, because I still think that like comparing his experience to these mummies would do a disservice to this experiencer at first, because more research needs to get done in the mummies before it becomes more of a thing and less of a spectacle. And so to preserve his experience and reputation, I want to just kind of keep that on the down low for now. But if it breaks, if that story comes out and people, more people share the similar sightings, I think that the alien mummies are going to be a big chapter and all this stuff. I really do.
How many of them have the chest plate in? Do we know? Is it all of them? I don't think it's all.
Just one, I think.
I think it might just be one. And there's like 3 different like species of things in there. There's like one that's like humanoid, right? That's like actually like more feet, like size of a person. And then there's the other smaller ones. And those of those ones, at least one of them has the chest plate.
Mm-hmm. One of those chest plate, and then the other one's seems to have eggs inside it as well.
Mm-hmm.
That gets my reptilian tingle on.
Why have they not do we know why they're not taken like the chest plate out?
I think they've tested
you destroy
the plate.
it, wouldn't you?
Yeah, pretty
Well,
fragile.
you would, but I mean, if it's okay, let's go there. If this thing is alien tech, and it's like circuit boards or whatever, yeah, surely that's massive. That would be huge if you took that out and you could clearly see that this was made from some creature
A
that,
mechanical object.
yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, what I get that.
Well, what they found so far is that the object is fused into the skin, like it's fused to the being. It's not just, it wasn't placed there on a burial, ceremonial thing. It's in there. It's inside the body.
So the body's kind of like accepted it.
Yeah.
Didn't this Jeremy Corbell's documentary Patient? I can't remember the patient number. Patient
51? Was it 51?
patient. No, that's Area 51. Patient. Anyway, the patient thing. Somebody in the chat.
7.
Patient 7. Yeah. What
See,
that
just
the
almost
doctor that's
51.
passed away said that thing looked like it was almost fusing with the tissue of that the guy that he took it out of. I think he took it out of the back of his neck, I think, or his knee. Anyway, but he said it was whatever that piece of metallic thing was. It was fusing with his body.
And this was an implant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that technology, it sounds very like close to what we can achieve, right? Coming up with some type of, nanotech or biological tech that becomes one with the person, some type of monitor, sensor, you can monitor, all kinds of stuff from there. Now, in the experiencer story I heard, where these beings were present and they were using these holograms, the one on the wrist, he said that the one being was clearly monitoring his vitals, because he would go through these very weird waves of terror and then relaxed. So and then he felt that as he was feeling terror, the being would go back to the wrist. And then, because there was 3 beings, one was exploring the room, one was monitoring him, and one was giving him messages through the holograms. And that the one that was monitoring him, he felt that one was in control of his fear. That as he started to be terrified of what's going on, he was then calmed through this device. And then, that's how it went down. It was just waves of that back and forth.
Wow. I mean, we spoke to quite a few people on this show that have claimed to been abducted. But to have I don't think we've ever had anybody on that's ever been able to describe them fully, other than I mean, we had a guy on that. Yeah, it was an amazing experience that he described of seeing these creatures at his window. But I've never had anybody kind of have them right in front of them, being able to know exactly what they look like.
Fringe.
Fringe did, but she's convinced the demons.
What makes her so sure?
Well, she could be right.
I think so. But what was her telltale signs?
She's had these experiences for going on. How long did she say now?
Oh, since childhood.
Yeah, I think it was 7 or something like that. Her husband's had
Something like
experience as well.
A mother.
Her biological father is something to do with a cult.
He was involved in Satanism and human trafficking.
Yeah.
What? Her biological father?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. She's estranged from her biological father.
I would hope so. With that track record, damn.
The full interview, guys. If anybody wants to go see it, she's actually she was on. Was it last week, Leo? Or week before?
Last week. No, we did. We didn't do. We did not do a show the week before. It was last week. The week we missed.
We did. We had Doug on, who's in the chat.
What's up, Doug?
The American Vindictor show, awesome. But yeah, it was. I think it was a week or so ago. But it was you and Dave. But then people in the chat was asking questions. But then we had her for the podcast where she was just talking about her experience, and it's wild. That journey of thinking it's ETs to then thinking that something is physically trying to take your soul.
Yeah. It's
And
Damn.
right. She has a I think that I first heard of her on the Confessionals podcast, and that's why I reached out to her after that. It took ages to get her on because she didn't really want to do any more interviews or anything after Confessional podcast. I think she had like a pretty bad experience with people coming at her after she did that.
Damn.
Anyway, with like a few shows later and stuff like that, I think she realized that we were sort of one of the more sort of open-minded channels out there, and she agreed to come on. I think all 3 episodes, but both the 2 of ours and the one she did on the Confessionals are all worth a listen. The crazy thing about her story is, and I mean this in the most respectful way I can say it, because I don't think her story is ridiculous at all, but it's the most ridiculous story that I've ever listened to. And while I've listened to it, I shouldn't believe a word of this, but there's something about how she's saying it and why she's saying it, and the way that she's trying to say so much about something that makes me feel it's not rehearsed. It's not like something she's dreamt up. She's trying to explain something that's so complicated to try and get into like an hour or an hour and a half. That's the struggle. But I one of my favorite guests we've ever had. Hopefully, I know we spoke to her, because if you go back and listen to it, I realize the audio from her end is a bit iffy. She realizes that as well, because she reached out to me to talk to me about it. I'm hoping next time we get her on, maybe we can get that sorted out. But even so, I think if you just bang some headphones in, know that it's not going to be the highest quality audio on the guest side. It's worth suffering through it just to listen to it and make your own mind up about it.
I think enough UFO. We've all seen plenty old videos with terrible audio
Exactly.
and sat through them. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
yeah, but also Tubes, it's like because everybody says the grift, somebody's got a grift, they want to be the next big thing. If you've got that all planned, you're going to get the decent microphone. She's not planning, she's not planning any of it. She's just agreeing to do shows, and coming on her laptop, and telling the story.
No, that's huge. And like a lot of the stories that include ridiculous elements, those are the ones I do listen to the most. Because I'm not saying I believe them the most in every case, but like if you're telling a story, if you're telling a lie and the intention of your lie is to be believed, you're going to leave out the things that cause people to question if you should be believed. So you're going to leave out, if you're lying, you're going to leave out like very major, like the crazier stuff. This is why I like Chris Bledsoe's story, because it's full of these like elements that if you were just lying, you'd include all the cliche stuff that people expected, and that would be your grift. But when you start to include details that are like so obscure and random and bizarre and kind of like confusing, you're like almost begging people to speculate or to be suspicious of what you're saying, which isn't something that like liars typically do if they're trying to grift. So Fringe has always been super cool in spaces as well. Like very good host, very cordial, guest and co-host. All of her stuff is very, very centered on the topic and on the human effect and that stuff. I don't even hear a ton of like forcible theories. You know what I mean? Just a lot of questions, a lot of like good statements, a lot of good sharing from there. So, and I caught a snippet of the show. I loved it. And one of your guys' best thumbnails of all time.
Oh, thank you. I think
Real
this
good stuff.
one. That one.
There it is. I love that.
Yeah. I'm quite pleased with that one as well. Thank you.
Yeah. Holly knows his way around a thumb.
Yeah.
It's good stuff.
So you've got 2 sides, I think now, of the whole UFO community. You've got a side that is very much on the nuts and bolts train. The the little green men are going to visit at some point. You know, we want, give us disclosure, give us disclosure, give us disclosure. And you've got, well, actually, there's three, because you've got the extreme side now that is like, this is demonic. You need to be careful what you wish for when it comes to these things. And then you've got the shows like ours that are kind of like going, holy shit, something's definitely going on, because A, that the government's telling us that this shit is real. B, we've never trusted the government before.
Mm-hmm.
And C, something smells fishy. I just made C up, but but you know what I mean?
Yes.
It's odd, to say the least.
It is. Sorry about the camera, just overheated, so it's like 100 degrees over here in this room. So, but there is these camps, right? They're here, and I what do you think they represent? Like, because I mean, we're all people. We're all trying to figure out answers for this, like a mysterious thing. How come there's camps that are like dead set, nuts and bolts, right? And then there's these other camps like, hey, we shouldn't even bother with this. You know what I mean? It's so alien, or it's so not into what we're doing right now. And then questioning it or looking into it could actually cause harm.
I think there's a camp out there which reminds me of what Graham Hancock talks about when he talks about mainstream archaeology, where there is, I think it's quite a big group of the UFO community. It's much bigger than I think that I would consider ourselves to be in like the free thinking sort of area. But they're so entrenched in that. They've invested so much of themselves in the crashes at Roswell, bits being taken to bases, was back engineering craft, that sort of like mid 60s onwards ufology. They're so indoctrinated by that they can't shift themselves around from it. And I think so you have that camp of people that have to keep it the same as it always has been. I think there's a fair case to be made that those people that are into the nuts and bolts, aliens from Zeta Reticuli, have kind of replaced religion with that. So they tend to be quite an atheistic group too. Then you've got the debunkers on the other side, which, like, most of them, like 10 years ago, were doing UFO shows, but they've found themselves so burnt they don't know exactly what to believe in anymore. So everything's got to be nonsense. And I still mean, maybe I think this just because it's the team that I'm kind of on in this, is then you've got shows like this which just go, you know, I don't really care what it is. I just think there's something weird going on. And again, like Ollie said, if people out there, like if the government is going to start telling me there's UFOs, I'm going to probably believe less in UFOs.
Yeah. It's kind of like, where do you put your paranoia and your distrust, and where do you put your trust, you know? For me, I've been an enthusiast of UFOs forever. I love the mystery of it. I just grew up that way. A lot of us have. And it wasn't until somewhat recently that I questioned, or I allowed myself to question, everything I thought I knew about UFOs in order to try to find some new truth, right? And I was just frustrated at the dead ends. I was frustrated at the secrecy. And then it must have been like, you know, these ideas must have crept in a lot. But I was really good at fending them off for forever, until like probably like after like 2020, you know what I mean? And then I started to think, like, if you look, like, the world right now in terms of journalism and information is pretty free, right? There could be an employee at a factory who could leak information that the news wouldn't find out for another year, right? And that could happen through Twitter, Facebook. It could happen through TikTok, a viral video. There could be tons of reasons why information would come out and why narratives would form out of nothing. Nothing prepared by the mainstream or legacy media. And when you look back and you go all the way back to the 40s, 50s, 60s, and I grew up in the 90s, so I'll just stick there. Like there was none of that. There was no citizen journalism like we see it today, and there just wasn't. And when I thought about that, and I thought about how popular the UFO story has been, that these are aliens from another place that have come here, I look back, and I'm a filmmaker, and I like to consider myself a student of film. And when I look back, I started to see that like they were implanting, the system itself was implanting the bigger theories about what these craft were through pop culture, right? Through movies and through radio shows and through TV shows. They were the architects of the UFO phenomenon as we see it today as a sci-fi phenomenon. They were the ones who implanted that into all of our minds, right? So like it's hard for people to shake that idea because every single aspect of pop culture reinforces that idea. And so if you don't examine and take apart your own belief systems, for an experiment or for fun because you're bored, you might not ever come to terms to the fact that like your worldview on certain subjects is completely based on what you're told, not on what you research and not on what you find, right? Because not everybody out there is finding UFOs. Not everybody out there is looking in the dark corners of the library or now the internet to find those answers. But everybody still kind of philosophizes on them, right? We all still kind of have a lot to say and a lot to think about them. And I just think that right now, the prescribed stock default setting for everyone as far as UFOs goes is that they're aliens from another planet, or that they're a government, experiment or something. Mm-hmm. And that's fine, but no one knows how they got to that point. And then when you think about how you get there, you're like, okay, that was given to me.
What I find interesting is, and it was the interview that Tucker Carlson did with Sean Ryan that got me thinking about this. And he was asked like a roundabout way of why he thought there was something spiritual to this, and he said that, and I this had never crossed my mind because I've always lived in the world where this was prevalent. That atheism was like a turn of the century idea, but we've always grown up with this being here, and like the atheism was kind of like the beginning of the death of folklore, I suppose, as well, because with doubting in like a higher power, I think people start to doubt in like the other things which have always been there. Like we've always had stories like Rekka in the chat just before mentioned that we've always had stories of like small beings, like from aliens now to fairies to elves to goblins. We've always had stories of like tall beings, of like Bigfoots and giants, but it's just this recent time in, we'll say, like the technological revolution where we've abandoned these thoughts of things that are a high strangeness and paranormal to what we consider normality. So I'm with Tucker Carlson now, where I look at these things and I go, well, hang on a second. If everybody before me and before what we consider like modern history, if everyone before me believed there was something else other than what we just see that's on the table and around us, the chances of us being right and the rest of recorded history being wrong, surely there's a high percentage that we're not, we haven't nailed it all of a sudden by merely throwing all these ideas out.
It's almost 100% guaranteed, right? That's the one thing we can guarantee, is that like it's not settled. And when you look back on in the history of mankind and all this, the discoveries and cultural like stigmas and practices, those, it's just an interesting thing. Like, I think one of the things we should do too is we should put everything in perspective, right? Like, and also figure out the history of science, like, because it's scientism, right? The idea that we're ignoring the gods and the folklore and we're sticking to the solid, the solid facts. not long ago, this was called satanic. Not long ago, the idea of ignoring spirituality and focusing on physicality was considered a satanic or adversarial element, like not good practice, right? But now in this era, right, and I'm not a religious person, right? I wouldn't even consider myself. I'm not one of those people that's like I'm spiritual. I'm not religious. I wouldn't say anything. I just like being around and I like looking into this stuff. But there are elements of a life and elements to life that are physical and non-physical. And these, while right now they might sound new agey, this was the science before science, right? The thing that people thought they knew were exactly what you're saying. They might not have been able to figure out all of the truths to, what makes water different than ice or whatever, right? They might not have been able to articulate that. But one thing they were doing was trying to figure out how they related to each other and how they related to the heavens. Like, how do we fit in to all of this stuff? Where's our place in it? And what's the easiest route? Like, people were always very well aware of the human condition. And so when science came out, which was like the 1500s, right? Like when the first little glimpse of it started to pop out in it was Germany, right? Through the Rosicrucians were working with trying to land this thing, spiritual science, and one of the things they wanted to do was to find more truth through the physical world in order to figure out more about the spiritual world. So the invention of science was literally created by Francis Bacon, who was a well-known Rosicrucian, back in the day. Like I said, like Nuremberg. You have John Dee and all these other different kind of occult people who were in the mix as well. And it was an occult practice, right? So this like modern Rosicrucianism started around that time, and it was a modern rendition of these older mystery schools from Egypt and all, they trace their stuff all the way back. And so that's one of the more modern like mystery schools. So it's an interesting thing. But from this research, from these godly people, spiritual people, they created the scientific method, right? Francis Bacon created this, and he wanted to find more universal truths. So now it's morphed into something different, and which I find to be very interesting, right? Because it was started to learn more about the physical to reinforce spirituality. And now it's been used to reject spirituality altogether. And I know this because I grew up as a very staunch atheist, and I grew up as a person who admired science. I thought that science was superior. And I mean, I thought this like at 10 and 11, you know what I mean? Like, science was superior than spirituality. Religions were archaic, and antiquated and just not up to par to answer these questions that we were starting to find interesting to us as a species. And I think the opposite now, and so like I think what we're seeing is like a weird type of revolution. They say in these mystery schools that human beings actually evolved between 14th century and then the 17th century. In that time, mankind transitioned and a new ability became available to us. And this was a higher intellect, that intellectually we could start to ask questions and look for answers that were never interesting to us before. And we would be able to find these answers through practice of just thinking. And that before this era, people thought less. They thought deeply, but they thought less. They intuited more. They were much more intuitive. And the act of thinking wasn't necessarily something that can get them in trouble in terms of like karma or even like physical danger, right? But after this era, and this is interesting too, because of course this is a weird concept, but when you look at what occurred in the physical world and within human minds and cultures between those eras, you see a huge difference, right? You have this what they call the Enlightenment Period, where you get all this, the great Renaissance, right? All the great artists, right? All these scientists coming out. And what you find when you really look into it is that the artists and the scientists were working together, and they were part of the same mystery school. So like Da Vinci, Michelangelo, these are all part of this mystery school, right? It was illegal to practice anything remotely that resembled science back in the day. Like, you couldn't do it. And so you have this combination of art, like even theater got in the mix. In alchemy, mixing together and then coming up with basically like new systems and new rules that took power away from the royal family, power away from the systems, and gave people a personal pathway to enlightenment or salvation, whatever you want to call it. And so through building this road, people were able to then, come up with much more complex ideas that were essentially helping create the world we see today, which is like the Industrial Revolution. And now we have the technical revolution, right? The technological revolution. And so, interestingly enough, we have this growth, this insane growth through so much speed. It's happened so much faster, so much more abruptly than it ever has in the past, that we are living a life so different, so drastically different than our grandparents lived. Our grandparents were alive before freeways, before credit cards, before things that it's kind of shocking to hear and to really think about. But that's how fast this world's moving. And it is, in some circles, considered like a very bad direction to go. Like, we are looking at the world very, very much, in the realm of if it's not solid, right? If I can't touch it, if I can't prove it, it's not real. But then we have right in our past, like yesterday, we have these stories of elves and fairies and demigods and these other the muses, where they were not only there was different realms of physical interactive worlds, there was also different realms within ourselves that had potential to do all kinds of other stuff as well. So now we reject that fully. People are encouraged to reject all of those thoughts. We are, encouraged to reject the woo, and you're rewarded through academia, through social, even invisible credit scores, right? But through, social rewards and risks or whatever, you do have these discouraging factors when it comes down to thinking that way. And even I'll poke fun at starseeds, you know what I mean? And I don't think you know what I mean? So we all do it. But when you look at what the UFO topic is proposing, for even people like Jacques Vallée, Gary Nolan, Eric Davis, what it's proposing is that we may have ignored something so much that it's actually reaching out, right? There's an interactive element between us and the fairy folk, right? Us and the Commonwealth. And
that's interesting. So, you're saying because we've ignored it for so long, that's why it's tickling us.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that we are so self-centered that we don't realize, that other beings and other parts of our experience, it's evolving with us. And we could be science-focused as far as it can take us, but when we become spiritual or just woo, when we grow to reject that off of just right away, just because we think that's the way to go, I think we see a lot of very negative things happen. We forget that science is supposed to help us explain what's going on. You know what I mean? So it's an observational practice. You observe it, then you can label it, but it's not. It doesn't define anything, because science is always proven wrong at some point, right? There's always more discoveries. There's always stuff to know.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we forget, and I think the solidification that scientific thought brings us is comforting. But it's false. It's a false comfort, because we have this growing closet that we kept putting stuff in. I don't know what the rods and those remember those in VHS cameras, you'd see these little rods. Okay, whatever. Put it in the junk drawer.
All over it in 2006, wherever it was.
So it's crazy. And then we have so many of those things, that we just kept putting in the junk drawer, putting in the closet, because it wasn't easy enough to answer. It didn't fit in the thing. And now, we have a problem. We have a serious problem where I do believe that whatever it is that is there is something that's interactive, and we should consider the interests of other things. We should consider that when we look at how the world treats us and what the world is doing. I'm not saying the universe is speaking to us or whatever, but there is an interactive element here. This is what synchronicity and stuff is. There's something interactive that we totally disregarded because we didn't want to either someone was encouraging us to reject a higher power or a higher intelligence for our own ego, or B, we wanted to do it ourselves out of instinct.
Sorry, go on, Ollie.
No, go.
I was just going to say, I was literally just going to bring this question up from American Vindictor show. Tupa, do you think science is being used to hide the supernatural?
Yeah, yeah. I don't think that was. It's not the intent of science to do that, right? It's not the. It's. I don't believe that. I just think that as we were like, I look at our intellect, and the scientific method is a new tool that human beings have gotten, right? And we know when it started, we know who started it, and we know how long we've had it. We know how long we've had this tool in our toolbox, and it's just new. And I think that anytime you get a new tool or a new toy, you focus on that, and you tend to ignore the other stuff that, you know what I mean? And if you do that too much, you'll forget the value of that other stuff. You'll forget the fact that it's like foundational and fundamental. And so, you know, the supernatural isn't an old set of antiquated dogmas that should be rewritten because they're dangerous, right? We should be weary of people who tell us this, because like, you know, like Lee, like you said, even Tucker Carlson acknowledges that's how we got here, right? We made it through all of the time. Our ancestors survived all this with those beliefs. They clearly served a purpose, and they were clearly beneficial. And so for us to reject it, we should look at ourselves and our societies and what's wrong and what's right, and think and ask ourselves, are the things that are wrong at all because of the stuff that we've started to ignore? Like, is there just because we have a new toy, right? Our brain works better. We can articulate things better, right? We can come to better conclusions versus like being tricked easier, right? I mean, this is a problem back in the day, but now, you know, we have, you know, our supposedly our minds are all working a lot better, but that can get us into dangerous ground, because we should really remember our intuition, our instinct, the stuff that can get us from the forest to a house, right? Those are things that are like we should remember. But yeah, I think that science is allowing us to disregard those and to bundle them all up into something that's like a junk drawer, like woo, when it's probably not.
I think one of the things. Sorry, Ollie. I think one of the things humans are really, really good at, and I don't know if this has been the case forever, or whether again this is just a modern condition. But you see it in all facets of life. It doesn't matter whether we're talking about things like this or whether we're just talking about your day-to-day work. We're really good at believing that everybody yesterday was an idiot, and things only got sorted out as soon as you turned up on the scene today.
That is so true.
Yep.
In normal day-to-day life as well.
Yeah. It's just everything before you was simple, but you've figured it out. You've just figured it out now, and from this moment forward, it's, to be perfectly honest, you see it right now in politics with people calling for communism. You know, for that side of the fence. You know, it doesn't matter that every other moment that it's been tried, it's had fucking deadly consequences. But now, today, the people that want to push for that thing, we've sorted it out. You know, we can do this now, and the failures of the past don't matter and don't have any bearing on us. But sorry, what were you going to say before, mate?
I was just going to say, like, when it, I think what you were you saying, like Trojan horses coming, Tupa. You were referring to, like, there's that many things that get thrown in the mix. We got to be aware of what we should trust when it comes, especially when it comes to what's being released in media. And I'm talking, let's talk about the UFO subject for one. You remember the lady on the plane?
Yeah, that mother effer back there is not real.
Yeah.
That woman, okay, yeah.
I've been thinking quite a lot about that recently.
I like the way you put your hands when you say you've been thinking a lot about it. Carry on, Ollie.
Yeah, I've been thinking about it a lot recently.
Your hands are far too small to handle even one of them.
I don't know if that whole thing was kind of like orchestrated. The whole thing.
It's a really good question, and something that we should always question now in the modern world of media and the internet and viral marketing and whatnot, right? Like, we should always question that. Any story that gets picked up and like that. I think we should. That one was particularly strange, right?
So, you said when you first saw those mummies, you were laughing, and now we're kind of like looking at those mummies and going, "Well, hang about, Gary Nolan's in on this. These motherfuckers might be real." But the thing is, what if? And I'm not saying they're not real. I'm not saying they're not fake either. But what if all these like things just get given to us? Like, like the big wooden horse that was it the Greeks presented to I can't remember who they presented it to. Somebody. Who did they present it to? Does anybody want to give me a
Yeah, right. That's the war Troy.
yeah, that was it. Yeah. The big horse, big Trojan horse. I think we get lots of those in this field, and we kind of get excited. We do shows on them. We do their work for them, and lo and behold, it always falls flat, and then we get made to.
Does it though?
Well, that did. Even
did
she
it? Did
she.
it?
She was like, "Oh yeah," it was just like
Because she came back looking like a lot different than she did in that video. She never explained.
That motherfucker's not real.
She never explained why she freaked out.
No, she didn't.
And to the level she did. Then there was that weird, because this is the thing. Just because there isn't like an ending to something doesn't necessarily mean it's all wrapped up in a bow and we can forget about it. I think it's quite the opposite. Because one thing I do 100% believe is the whoever the we'll say we can use the words like deep state, Illuminati, whatever the element is that has like a controlling hand behind governments. We know there is one. This is now, I think, like provable fact. Whether you want to look at things like ultranational cooperation when it comes to things like the World Economic Forum, stuff like that, there is control groups that are behind government, that have infiltrated government, that has a real effect on our day-to-day lives. And I don't think that's in the world of conspiracy anymore. These people have, I believe, lost control of the internet. And that's why we have these strange things bubbling to the surface, because in the same respect where they use like things like viral videos and viral news to control the population, also the fact that things can go viral and things can catch fire can also work the other way. It's like, so it's for every fucking Hawk 2 girl, there's gonna be
Love that girl.
like a high strangeness moment as well. So when you think in just off the top of my head, and I'm probably going to forget things, we had motherfuckers not real girl wasn't tied up whatsoever, because there was no explanation for why she went fucking crazy on a plane if it was the same girl. Again, no particular order. We had the Miami Mall incident. So fucking crazy story.
Yeah.
But again, the fact that there was no footage of the fight that was supposedly broke out between youths, and every fucking police car that seemed to be within like 17 fucking 100 postcodes of the area turned up, never explained. The things like you had videos like the guy, I believe Vet did a video on him. I think the guy was full of shit. I think he was using, fair play to him as well, the guy that came out like that, I helped hoax the alien invasion. I think he jumped on top of it.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
He was doing something totally different.
Yeah.
He was just also in Florida.
Yeah, he was also in Florida. And I think he just thought he could, what he did, he was essentially like a low level. And I don't mean that as disrespectful to him. The guy's got over 1 million followers. He's clearly got a fan base. But it's like a lower level Logan Paul trick is what he was doing. So that wasn't cleared up. the Las Vegas alien wasn't cleared up, and not only that, when the when the footage came out, the HD footage, there seems to be some sort of black mass in that, which, when looked at by a VFX expert, they're saying, well, there's something fucking there. So that wasn't cleared up. These
that has the
things,
corridor, whatever they're
corridor
called.
crew.
Corridor crew.
Have they looked at it?
Yeah, of course they have. They've looked. Yeah, they do all that stuff, and obviously I don't watch it. But the thing is that these stories have bubbled up to the surface, and although we forget about them because time passes on and we talk about new stuff, it doesn't mean they're no longer strange. Like I still think that Miami Mall incident is one of the strangest things I've ever seen. Like, just the
Oh yeah.
like, for no other reason, that even if it's got a mundane excuse as to what happened, why has no one looked into the failing of the police force that evening? The failing of the police force being that apparently there was a few kids fighting with sticks, and the entire Miami Police Department left Miami to burn while they went to a mall. That doesn't make sense.
It's a good point, and I'm sure something may have happened that they could have done with one of them officers in that time.
Yeah, you would think so.
Just guessing. It's a big place.
The Miami Mall thing is wild. We're having, incidences like that happen where there's very little follow-up and only a couple phrases given that are supposed to basically put out the flames of curiosity, so people stop with the mystery. And we should really consider that, these examples, right? I called the mall and I asked some worker there if he saw what happened, if he knew what happened. He was working in the GameStop. And he's sounded like a completely normal guy. And then I was just like, hey man, you guys selling this game? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, cool. Real quick, what happened at the mall last night? What was going on? And he's like, oh, just some kids fought, some kids were fighting. And then they brought out some sticks. He goes, my manager was actually here working, but we all know what happened. But if you want to talk to him, he'll be working a little later. So yeah, then I even called back and it was nothing. Every worker thought that it was just a fight that happened. Now it was an upper tier kind of area. And it was a slow night. So all the cops going there, I guess they might've thought that it was one of those, flash mobs that break into a Zales or something. But I don't know why the response was that high. But regardless of that specific incident, because I do think something weird happened there, they just won't tell you. We should consider how easy it is to erase events from the public view. How easy it is to what do they call memory hole them now, right? It's almost like it never happened. There's incidences that are far more nefarious that we have no answers for, whatsoever. But the mysteries still are surrounding it. And the weird thing about some of these instances is we're actually discouraged from asking questions about them. They'll create stories that make it so if you ask a question, now you're this or you're that, you're othered immediately. And I think that's these are huge red flags, right? And I think it really, for me, I want to know what you guys think. It fortifies my curiosity and my self-assuredness, right? To be I don't care what people think. You know what I mean? I don't trust what people think. I'm going to focus on this because I see something to it. I think this is interesting. I think this is strange. I think this is bizarre. I no longer need the public to agree with me on this. I don't need it. In fact, public endorsement by the masses to look at, that something's wrong might indicate, the opposite. It might indicate that something's right. Because of how fast and how easily we are pretty swayed as a society. Right, even around the world now with the internet, with influence. I mean, it's pretty bizarre, but I think that's one of the good things that's happening. I feel more self-assured in the stuff I want to look up and the topics and stuff like that because, yeah, just of how what the climate's like right now.
I tell you what, it makes me think how much we failed in the UK as our police service because a shopping center shopping mall near me, there were
7 xenomorphs, not a single
yeah.
policeman turned up.
There was a gang in there with chainsaws.
Get the fuck
And
out of here.
They chainsawed through a jeweler's in the broad daylight when the shopping centers were open. And there were a guy outside. There's video footage of him just revving his chainsaw with people just getting the hell out of there. I think something like a grand total of 3 cop cars turned up.
Yeah, and there you go, Ollie.
And the cop cars are small.
But there was people with video footage of it.
Yeah.
Where's the Miami video footage?
There was video footage of this.
You know, like you had the girl, didn't you, not so long ago? The I'm looking for a man in finance girl. Like, she literally said a few words, and then the next thing is fucking Tiesto is making a dance remix of her 6 words.
Tiesto, for sure,
like
for sure.
this is how the world works. The world works on going viral now. And if there's an incident happening in front of you that you think could go viral, people are going to film it.
I'll tell you so. As soon as they pull the chainsaw, I ain't filming that. I feel like, yeah, I'm going.
I don't know. Dude. I've been a cameraman forever. I would be like, fuck. I'd be like trying to look for the better angle. Like, you know what I mean? Because it's just like, this is insane. There's this weird thing that happens when you film something too. It removes you from the incident. Because you're looking at it like on the screen.
Yeah.
And even though you're in the 3D space that it's happening in, you're actually consciously in the screen. And so you're totally removed. It's so weird. But yeah.
I think that's a very good point as well, Tupa, when it comes to filming UFOs. When we were in the States and Lee wasn't feeling too well, and he put his head down. Me and Dave went UFO hunting, and I'm seeing
Ollie loves bringing up the fucking fact that I wasn't feeling great and I went to bed and you saw UFOs.
Yeah, but I'm trying to film it with my phone, and Dave's like, "Well, they'll just show up as dots. Why don't you just enjoy it?" And it's right. I do think there's got to be evidence, but I do think some people that are filming, if a UFO is absolutely spectacular, like mind blowing, are you gonna go, "This is amazing, I'm gonna get my phone out"?
Yes.
No.
Do you think so? I do. I think there is. I think I'd look at it, but I would definitely have like my phone like that, looking that way.
Okay, let me rephrase that. What if essentially what you're seeing, say you're seeing what it could look like an angel.
Mate, people video just before bombs go off.
Let's bring up Greer's classic here, the one next to the Alien Addict logo. Say something like that. Whether that's real or not, I don't know. But say you see
that Bijou.
These are what Stephen Greer. These three. There was the little elf-like thing in the middle, but I do like the one next to the Alien Addict logo.
Yeah.
Can you imagine seeing something like that? And go, if I saw that, I'm not thinking that's an alien or a spaceship. I'm thinking that's something completely different. So do I pull my phone out if I think
I'm gonna be thinking, if I'm doing C5 and that turns up at me, I'm gonna be looking at it going, "Motherfucker, Greer's gonna charge me extra for this."
100%.
Well, sightings are strange too, right? Like, I know of multiple sightings that occurred where the person got a feeling that it was about to happen. Like, hey, you're about to see something crazy. Don't freak out. And then they look in the sky and there's like a silvery object. Right? Keemstar said that.
Mm-hmm.
That's his experience as a kid. And a lot of other people have that experience. I just tend to think that whatever it is, it's probably not as simple as like, oh, look at that. You know what I mean? Like, because I've never seen a UFO. I've never seen it. I've seen strange things, but I could never identify or classify it as a UFO. Just too weird, too small, too far away. But there's just so many, and I wonder, like, what is that experience like, right? And like, there are people clearly who do film them, right, all the way back from when cameras were around, but like, there's a lot of instances where it seems like the experience takes you, and the thought of pulling a camera out and filming is rare. And then like the instances where the camera doesn't work is high. I hear a lot of things like, oh, pulled my phone out, it just wasn't working at the time. Right? Like we've all had that weird thing happen where you pull your phone out to do something and it won't even slide. And you were just using it in 2 seconds ago. Then you're like, well, what? Or the camera button, it opens the camera, but suddenly nothing's going on. Nothing happens. These very strange glitches that, they seem to be well timed. And you got to wonder, like, what is a UFO sighting? Is it an object that you just happen to see? Just like, like if you're bird watching and a cardinal goes by, and you're like, oh, good timing, right place, right time. Let's get it. Or is there something way more strange about it? Like, what do you guys think of the temporal aspect of sightings? Like, almost that, like, you knew you were going to see it because, it's, or like the idea of being able to predict traumatic, like scientists prove this in a lab. I don't know if you guys know about this experiment, but they would, this one, guy, I can't remember his name right now, but this dude, Eric Wago, was on Danny Jones' podcast recently, and he was talking about this experiment too. And people were able to predict things that were about to happen. And how they tested this is that they were showing them images. And like, they were looking for the reaction time that the brain would have with the image. And what they found was that the brain would react before they were given the image, especially if the image was of like porn or some kind of like gore, like something traumatic, something like boom, like it's going to lock in. And so basically the brain was reacting to the stimulus before the stimulus happened, if the stimulus was traumatic enough or I don't know how to describe it, but like, like tantalizing enough. If it was going to elicit a strong reaction, the brain reacted milliseconds before they were even shown it. And this was again and again, like, and so there's this weird element to, do we know what's about to happen sometimes? And are UFO sightings related to that?
We all get that feeling, don't we? Like, there's, I know there'll be a guy listening to this podcast because we used to rehearse in the same studio with our bands, and it wasn't like an old building or anything like that. It was just a corridor. There was a corridor that split the like the soundproof rehearsal room to the toilets in the kitchen. You walked to the toilet, you jogged back. That was like the joke. Nobody wanted to be in that fucking hallway. And I 100% believe that is something deep in our mind from a time where we had like another predator. And there has to be a reason.
That's Sixth Sense.
We are all to a certain extent fundamentally scared of the dark. Do you know what I mean? Like, some people say, I'm not scared of the dark. Great. Well, let's put you in a completely fucking dark room and leave you for a while just to wander around, see how you feel when you're completely disorientated. Let's see how brave you are then. And I'm almost convinced that there is something in our distant past, if not our actual present, that is a predator to us. That we know that we can sense when that predator is about.
I would agree.
I think
100%. You get that feeling, don't you? It's like you get that feeling. If you've ever been in a fight?
Yeah, it's exactly the same feeling.
You get that feeling before the fight even happens.
Yeah, I get that just when you log on, like when I first see your face.
Thanks. Do you find those as well? It may be just me, but when you're speaking to somebody, it's almost like you can hear what the word that they're gonna say before it's even out of the mouth. It's like sometimes it feels like my brain is slightly ahead, and I can hear what
No,
they're
you're just
saying.
a fucking psychopath.
No, there's something to that. I mean, do you know what part of the brain would govern that sense?
No,
Not really.
It's the
Gary Nolan would.
it's the basal ganglia. So the basal
Right.
ganglia is what governs like intuition, because it's taking all of your experiences, and then like that's the bottleneck between your consciousness and your action. And so all of these experiences and all like your memories, all of these your desires. So your information, like if you're talking to a friend and you're able to predict what they're about to say, or you're talking to anyone, that's because like there is a fair amount of ahead thinking going on, and that's what's feeding this kind of like intuitive thought. That's how we react so quickly to things, and like that's one of the things, interestingly enough, that Gary Nolan and Christopher Green have looked into, because it was a very interesting part, because there was a higher neural density of this area, and all of the people's brains who had seen UFOs were good at remote viewing, had strange experiences, saw ghosts, you know what I mean? CE5, that's whose brains they were looking at. And there's this, that's one of the interesting aspects of like the temporal part. I asked Gary Nolan this a couple of years ago on a Spaces, if the basal ganglia and the idea of intuition was hinting at a non-temporal part of consciousness, that if like time wasn't really real and the past and the present always was around, then do we have this part of our consciousness, like part of our brain, that's actually limiting information that comes in, and then permitting some, right, like that, like some future stuff, because like and he said maybe, which is a great answer, I think, at the time. But then there's more work that's been done on the predictive nature of dreams, and like how dreams can be prophetic in some ways. Like it's predicting like actual future events that are about to take place, or 10 years later will take place. And the question is like, how are they doing that? And the idea of like your consciousness itself not being locked into time and space. It's its own thing. It's part of a different higher dimension. And that like this time and space aspect is just one part of it. And so like when you're using intuition or you're in the flow state, you're not just, reacting. You actually remove yourself from the reactionary aspect of the physical world. And now you transcended, and you're like riding this wave. If you ever played an instrument or played a video game where suddenly, or like played a sport or been jogging, I hate running. I've never done that. But like the idea is like there's these flow states that occur where you're now not even thinking about what your body's doing, and you're totally lost in thought. That would happen to me while playing the drums. And that was like part of why I like playing it. You just close your eyes, and then all of a sudden you're thinking about so many other things, and it's all coming through, and it's a very strange state. And a lot of people call that like the hypnagogic state, right? Or like whatever. And people get these instant downloads in those states of mind all the time, right before you wake up, or like you're like lost in thought. And I've talked to a lot of people who have been driving and had a UFO experience, and then afterwards they're in a completely different part of the town, you know what I mean, in their car, and they're like, what the hell just happened? And you gotta wonder like, what, these beings kind of creep in these hypnagogic states? Could we be more susceptible to suggestion, and could these like interactions be happening? But yeah, it's a strange thing.
I've definitely had that feeling that where you drive somewhere, and then like 10-15 minutes down the road you think, how the fuck did I get here, and did I stop at any of those lights?
Yes. And you start thinking, did I hear a bunch of honking behind me? Have I been muting this all out? like what's going on?
I don't know if you've ever had this, but there's a certain route that I do with work. It's a 3-hour drive, and I get to this certain point, and I think it could be the altitude change. But when I get to this point, I get this. Have you ever felt like when you're driving that like almost like time has like slightly slowed or gone fast all of a sudden?
Describe that.
I don't know.
Ollie,
I've had it.
It's called an accelerator.
I've had it a few times driving over the Dales, and it's like a 300 for 3 hour drive. I don't know how many miles it is, but 180 miles or whatever. But yeah, I get this. It's like for a split second, and I think it's just because I'm just locked on to nothingness and just I'm in remote, and then maybe it's my body just going, "Oh, you need to concentrate more." I don't know, but it feels almost like I'm jolting in time.
Yeah, I think that you're jolting in and out of like different types of consciousness.
Yeah,
probably.
I think what you're aware that like you've just slipped into a different state of consciousness, right? Like that's what it sounds like anyway. Which is like which happened to me while driving along. I used to do a 2.5 hour trip one way, so I guess almost 5 hour round trip, like once a week. I used to do this drive, and like it was. I remember certain points in the drive, like as like checkpoints.
Yeah.
But everything in between, I allowed myself to fucking zone out, like not there, like what I mean. And I remember like being like, "Whoa, I'm here now." Okay, like that kind of thing, and then like just go, and then just driving, doing obviously obeying the laws, present in the moment, but like I can't when I go to recall it, I can't recall it. So it's like this weird kind of and I think it's like a dream state where like everything, the motor's going, it's all there, but they call this the astral body, right? Your consciousness and your imagination. Like if you get lost in thought, you're in your astral body. If you're daydreaming or in a dream, that's what's going on. And like it's separate from the physical body, and it's separate from, they call like the etheric body, which is like energy. Like I think like the electricity in your body, the life energy of it, the thing that keeps it animated. So like even when you dream at night, when you sleep, they say that like the observer, like your soul is gone, and then the astral plane, your astral body is gone. Both of those things leave together, and now your observer is inside your imagination, and that's where the dream's taking place. But it leaves behind either your physical body and then the thing that keeps the physical body moving, the thing that keeps the heart beating, the lungs going. That's all there. So yeah, it's an interesting aspect of
dreams like obviously dreams are strange. I don't know if I told you this, Lee, because it's been a manic week, but like a lot of mornings when I'm driving to work, I'll ring Lee up. But my little boy,
more of a counselor.
Yeah. My little boy came into our bedroom last week, I think it was. It might have been just at the end of the week before. Anyway, he said that he saw a black figure crawling on his bed. And I'm like, he's just having a bad nightmare. And then I put him to bed, and then I walked back to my bed. And then as I was just about to get into bed, I thought, what a dickhead I am. And I went back and I sat with him because he went straight back to sleep when I was there, like literally straight back to sleep. And then I walked back, but then I thought, no, I'm going back. And I don't really necessarily pray, but I kind of just said, like, if there is something there, fuck off. In Sony, like a little prayer, yeah.
Doesn't sound like a prayer.
But I asked him about it the next day. I said, what were you dreaming about last night when you ran into the bedroom? He said, I didn't. And he couldn't remember anything from it. But when he said a little like black figure crawling on the bed, I wanted to try and get information out of him the next day. Was it a shadow figure? What was it? But he had no memory of it. But you told me this literally while he was freaked out, and I didn't want to talk to him about it because he was half asleep. I just like patted his head and what have you, put him back to bed. But maybe these, the bug, mind the beg buds don't bite, is an actual real saying. It means something because we need to watch out for them.
I think it's smart of you to go back in the room and then like take that precaution, because like you know, he didn't say that he saw something obscure like a kangaroo or something. You know what I mean? He didn't say that.
No,
He said
he
like
just said
a black
that.
creature, you know, and I think it's like a nightmarish creature. And it's one of those things I think as a parent, and just because you got to remember, like as your kid grows up, you start to remember what it's like to be that age, you know, because it's so long far away, you know what I mean? Like, and so when my kid was growing up, I was like, holy shit, like I forgot all about this part of like loving to draw. You know, I like drawing still, but just the idea of it and coming to like it and stuff. And with their fears, it's similar. You know, you start to see like how they're interpreting it, and like how how strong their imagination is. You know, like my kid's like 4, but I also have like a 13-year-old, and it's just their imagination is so strong, it's real. And they don't know. You know, they have no idea if their greatest fear is going to turn true or not. And so, like in the state like bedtime, where they're fighting sleep, or where they just wake up, or they're in a dream. All these things that are around people, you know, they exist in our minds, but like what's the separation between your mind and the physical world? Like what's the difference? You know, like obviously there's a big difference, but to a kid, what's the difference? And like, you know, as you get older, you know, for me, like you start to realize that your thoughts begin to come true. You know, like if you wanted to make like a podcast, you have to think about it, and then you build it. But you do, you know, it always existed in your mind first, and then it starts to manifest through the work you do to build something up. So there's just this weirder process when it comes down to like how to turn some things real that are just in your mind. Some things are more complex than others, but when it comes down to kids seeing things that quote unquote aren't there, I actually think that the work to get that from your mind into the real world is far less. There's some kind of believability thing that goes with it.
I'll tell you what is crazy, and I bet it's happened to you guys when you were kids. It's happened to me as an adult, but do you remember always flying when you were a kid? And sometimes you'd go out of the window. You'd be stuck on the ceiling. You wouldn't actually be able to get down, or you'd run away from something that you didn't know you were running away from, and you would always run in slow motion.
Yeah,
like you couldn't actually get away from it. It's like almost like your body's.
Yeah, it's like the ground's flat, but it feels like you're running uphill. You have to crawl, even pull, and it just like very. What about the fighting dreams?
And why is it always kids that get these dreams, but as adults we don't get them as much?
Well, I worked out the other day that because I mean I've remembered these experiences when I was a kid, but it was only listening to somebody else's experiences of sleep paralysis that made me realize that I used to get that as a child, but it wasn't in the it wasn't in the sense of lying, realizing I couldn't move. I'd have this reoccurring thing where I'd feel like I was shrinking in my bed. So the whole room would feel like it was expanding around me, and I felt like I was getting like smaller. I was only when I the other day I listened to someone else that had sleep paralysis, and they had exactly the same thing where they felt like the world would expand around them when it would happen. And I had that regularly as a child. Like, I mean, weekly, if not every other night for years. Don't know what it means.
That's a very interesting dream. I've never heard of that.
But this goes into abductions, though. Like a lot of people that describe abductions, essentially, it sounds like they're describing a dream.
Yeah.
It's very similar. And like, I want to be very sensitive when I talk about this, because I feel as if it could come off that I'm casting doubt on people's experiences or whatever. But I just have a different. I'm not. I think that they're real. But like, you know, certain dreams are just different. You know, like I don't have the classification for them. I don't do dream research outside of like what neurologists like say and theorize about it, and like how it fits into like ufology and whatnot. but like some dreams just are in a class of their own. Some of them feel like movies. Some of them feel like they go on for years, right? But they're very in them, and then in between these like very strong categories, there's these like random ones that you can't really categorize. They're just always going to be random grab bag, kind of like very quick, right? Like very quick things. But like I think it's really important, the dream world and dream research when it comes down to UFOs. Like it's like really, really important. And someone like by the name of Matthew Roberts, he was on one of the ships, I think it was the Roosevelt, that saw one of the Go Fast or one of those other videos. He was on the ship when it was recorded, and he said that by looking at it, he had this weird existential experience, and it caused him like to quit like the Navy, and he wrote a book called like Initiated, that's about like the spiritual initiation process and what the UFO experience kind of is, and how there's all these different metaphors and stuff for it. And he was the first one I heard describe the abduction experience, especially when it comes down to the more overt kind of like reproductive themes of abductions, how that's a metaphor for the creative process, that kind of like reproductive activity, and that kind of like even anything in that realm, like if it just deals with like extracting like fluids or whatever, like all of that stuff is a metaphor for creating or co-creating something with not an alien, but like a spiritual being. And that a lot of these experiences are jarring people, right? Like kind of like out of like a state of, like just where you're not really looking at things in this way, where you're not really looking at them. A lot of these experiences cause this. And I think that there's something to that. I think that a lot of the stuff we think we're experiencing in the physical world is actually like not only a manifestation of stuff that we're experiencing inside in our own minds, but like it's a product of it. And there's plenty of crossovers between dreams and that, not just because we're like conscious beings, but the same like research you were talking about that Tucker Carlson, right, credits his belief that these are spiritual, like because of all the history, a lot of people thought, and people still do think, that the dream is still the place where these NHIs, this non-human intelligences, they're not just non-human. In a lot of cases, they're non-physical, and the only way they can interact with us is in the conscious realm. And when you hear people call like, oh, it's the astral plane, it sounds super strange. So I just prefer to call it like in your imagination, in your dreams, in these hypnagogic states, while you're daydreaming, while you're in a flow state. These things can happen. These interactions happen with these non-human intelligences. And when people wake up from them, I think that their memory of the event might be so fulfilled that it feels like a memory of a physical event, when in reality it's like this like spirit walk you took with like a guide and everything you were shown was a metaphor for something, and everything you experienced was supposed to help you with something, but you walk away feeling like it's a real physical thing that happened. And I think that instead of causing growth like it did in like someone like Chris Bledsoe, right, I think it can cause trauma if interpreted the wrong way. I don't know if all these experiences, the ones that are negative, if they have to be that way. I wonder if that's just the thing that's gone on inside, like inside of how we're interpreting an event. And yeah, I don't know, but there's something to that. I think that
definitely. Lee, was it you that pointed out that Greer's like summoning of that like green leaping thing looked like Aleister Crowley's
Look like
lamb? Yeah, have you seen that? The difference between them two. So that everybody loves to take the piss out of that little string bean in the middle. But it does. It has a
bijou.
It does have a resemblance to lamb.
It's really, the big head, small body is very, something we gotta figure out. Why is that? Why are they the same? What's going on there? going on?
I don't know. I go up and down with Greer all the time. That sounded wrong.
Yeah, really did.
But yeah, I like Stephen Greer. I don't know. I don't know what to think. I really
think
don't.
he's I think he's a guy that has been in this field for so long, and he came in with 100% pure intentions and has been hit with so many brick walls. If he's either, I don't want to say lost his mind, but it's definitely affected him. You know, so, and at that point, I mean, it goes back to the grifter thing, doesn't it? How can you hate somebody that wants to do something, spends a long time doing it, and works out a way to get paid to do it? That doesn't, like, just because your plumber gets paid doesn't mean that he's like his idea of plumbing is nefarious.
Yeah. The grifter word gets put out a lot. I think even like Ryan Graves, Kimball highlighted this the other day in a post. Like Ryan Graves, like someone was like, "Yo, I think the term grifting is awful. It's being overused," and he said it's almost a form of gatekeeping. And it's true.
Yeah, 100%.
It's true.
100%.
It's true. If you want someone to not be successful or to not have a successful endeavor, you just call them a grifter, right? And that can include a lot of stuff. Like let's take Avi Loeb, for instance, right? He wants to get on a ship and go out in the ocean and dig up UFO parts. He thinks they're going to be out there, and I think he's right. A lot of people do, but like that could easily be called a grift. That's like a probably like a $60-75 million grift if you really want to. Yeah. But it's like, oh wait, it's an actual effort to do something. And then what we should look at too is like who out there is calling grift the most, while giving free passes to other things that are even could be highlighted even more, or encouraging people to believe in something while also discouraging them from believing in another. Like that kind of thought policing should really be just highlighted. You know what I mean? Like, because a lot of times those things work in tandem, and that's when you know that there's narrative control going on.
Rec has brought a really good point up here. He said, Lee, don't forget about Operation Mockingbird, control opposition. I think Greer is half sincere and half a scam artist. I think that could also be that could also be 100% true. I don't really know. What I can gather through looking just in the circles that we move in is that I think the people that are truly like infiltrated by Project Mockingbird, which I think is 100% real thing, and it's all, well, we know it's 100% real thing, but I think it's 100% still in operation today with various things. I don't think the people that are doing it, even though they're doing it, I think I could probably list 4 or 5 people that we all know, we've all spoken to, and they are gatekeeping. They are is spreading like disinformation to a certain extent. They don't even know they're doing it. They think that they think they're doing it because they've got some sort of intellectual superiority over other people, and they've just been Jedi mind tricked into this.
Dude, a lot of people, I agree with you 100%, Lee, and a lot of people come into the community simply because they look down on it. It's almost like how someone would go into like the flat earth community, right? Like an intellectual who would go into the flat earth community in order to just to mock them, just to like lord their intelligence over them, just to debate with them. I think some people pop in and they're just doing that too, and they see this community as like gullible suckers, and so they want to always come in and like steer people into a direction that's like they have a savior complex, and so that's people have tons of different reasons to pop in, but I think that like people's interests in fascinations should be more sturdy and have more solid foundations, because I see a lot of people in I don't want to just say the community, but I see a lot of people online when fringe topics are brought up, they want to be the smartest person in the room, and so they'll just be like, oh, that was VFX, or that's a proven hoax, and they just don't, and that's because they have a fear of looking like the dumbass or looking like the but people should be, if they're interested into fringe topics, if you're in, they should be willing to look like the dumbass. There's you know what I mean? It's like you have to risk it. You have to risk it. That's not to say you should believe in just everything, but yeah, people sometimes like the most, these accounts or whatever, the most popular ones and like the loudest voices in the room, right? They're loud for all kinds of reasons. They're respected for all kinds of reasons, but it's rarely their courage. A lot of times it's like, who do they know or what they do or whatever. And so, yeah, like it's a risk.
Fear for your life or reputation is the two strongest methods of control. There's nothing stronger than either the fear of taking somebody's life or reputation.
So, and for some, the reputation exceeds it. Like social interaction means so much to us as a species that it could be lorded over you as a threat, almost like to your life, in almost every group. And I think that like that's a weakness that people have, that like pride allows you to ignore, but we should all accept about ourselves. That the fear of rejection, there's my camera again. The fear of rejection is stronger than the fear of death and like excommunication. You know what I mean? Because if we were left out in the wilderness, we'd die. So we have very strong reactions to that idea of being othered, and people will panic. Most people can't take it.
I think it's probably a good reason as well why you see, and not just in the UFO community, in like just YouTubers in general, there is a long history of, I mean, it's obvious, even just if you talk about Keemstar and people he knows that have like fallen like on hard times through being content creators, and it's probably because those people spent more time in the digital realm building up relationships with people that are like viewers, fans, whatever you want to call it, and don't quite have the solid relationships around them like in the flesh world. And the minute you rely on that sort of stuff, you have to fight to keep it. And if people are going to come into your community and like argue with stuff like that, you have to try and keep those people around you, because like subconsciously, if you lose like the digital people around you, there's no flesh ones there either.
Very lonely thought. And a lot of kids are growing up in that world, right? Where like the digital credibility and the digital interaction means more, right, than the interpersonal ones. And that's something we're gonna have to deal with as a society, the toxicity of this stuff, because there's no, in the digital world, there's like none of the like, I hate to say it this way, but I guess I'll say natural. There's none of these natural orders in the digital world. Do you know what I mean? Like some of them psychologically exist, and just because of like cause and effect, they exist. But like in the natural world, we have very intuitive, like instinctual, tried and true, practices, right? Like eye contact and like being able to read somebody's intentions through their voice, through, their body language. And, most interaction isn't done through podcasts with cameras and stuff like that. Most of it's done just through like, typing shit out and leaving comments and all that other stuff and likes, you know what I mean? This weird type of reward system that is designed by corporations and then weaponized by individuals in ways that would be illegal or, shunned if done in person, right? But it's crazy out here. So like the dangers of the digital world isn't just that like people can detach from the real world. It's like like you said, like what happens psychologically when you do detach, because it's not just like, okay, it's like you lost time. Like, no, something else is, you're programmed now to do other things, right? And that might not feel natural. Like you're programmed, because of these companies, they didn't just make apps that like are fun. Like they hacked the brain. So like, for instance, on Facebook and probably all of their social medias like now, did you know that like they limited the amount of likes you can see that you were getting? Like if you posted something and it was going kind of, a lot of people liked it. And let's say 5 people liked it at the exact same time, your likes won't go up by 5. Your likes will go up. Yeah, they time it out, because they know how much dopamine your brain can produce per second. So it's timed out so that it can give you the maximum amount of dopamine over the maximum amount of time. So you're consumed with the product more. So even though 5 people like it instantly, you're going to see 1 and you're going to like go down. Then 2, now your dopamine's back up. It's just like gambling. And so they did this not by accident. All of these guys are doing this on purpose. That's how dangerous it is, because it's reprogramming. It's not just like, oh, cool, I'm interacting. No. You're reprogramming what you love. Like you're reprogramming like these very fundamental things. And that might, while it might be okay, I guess, to have a dopamine reaction in the digital world, but it's not okay, because again, you're taking out the natural order and you're giving it up to a corporation who's simply manipulating the natural order of yourself, right? The brain, the dopamine, all your organs, all the glands. It's just using that as a slave to steal your attention. It's crazy.
I know it saves notifications. Like I know that social media companies will serve you notifications, like sort of Tupa's just tweeted, or someone's just done an Instagram story, and because of the data they scrape from your phone, they know when best to serve you a notification, when there's more chance of you taking your phone out, looking at your phone, interacting with the app.
Yeah, and it's dangerous.
You've all had it where you've been talking with somebody about, say, a product or something, and then you'll go on a website and that product's been advertised on your phone.
Yeah.
That, to me, is just like
wild.
What? You know, the scary part about that is a lot of people, including myself, I assumed that they were listening to me. And I assumed that like they were like just hearing me and stuff, or like looking at my searches or something. And then what really scares me, guys, is the idea that they're not listening. They're programming us so well that they can predict what we're going to want.
Yeah,
they can predict our desires. They're that good at programming us that they can actually go, this fool's going to want Skittles right now. This guy, you know what I mean? This guy's going to want to go on vacation in 2 days. Like, I think that they're so good at it that the phenomena that we all experienced over the last 10, 15 years of being, watched on our phones, and feeling like we were being listened to, and then the NSA saying like, yeah, we are listening to you. I actually think that the real truth is much darker in that, yeah, we're actually being programmed so well that the stuff we happen to talk about isn't us. Like, we don't have free will anymore. They're telling us we might be, like all of your original ideas and stuff might be programmed. Like, we don't know how deep it really goes, but I'll tell you, if they can program your dopamine without you knowing it, if they can do all that stuff, then they could, like, through your online interaction, they could cater every search, they could cater every article. Like, if there was an AI, let's just put it this way. They did all these tests. I forget the name of the test, but you guys feel free to look this up. Fact check me on this. They caused people to think about their own mortality, and they watched what they did, right? So they had people come into a science experiment, volunteers, and they were told they would take a test on the computer, and that was the science experiment. So they all did, and then they left the lab. And what they didn't know is that that wasn't the experiment. The experiment was what they would do after they left the lab, because they were giving everyone 2 different tests. One of 2 different tests. One group was given a test where all the questions were, very kind of like pop culture questions, just potpourri. What is this? What is that? But they included language that was like life and beauty, right? And then with the other group got the same questions, but they were phrased different, and they included words like death and dying and sick, right? On the surface, not more negative, right? Because it's just the way that it was phrased. And it was just these key words, right? But then they watched what they did afterwards. Now, there was a receptionist outside the lab. There was a candy box, please take one, right? There was a doorman, a security guard at the door, and they were all programmed. They were all scripted, right? So the receptionist was told to say goodbye to everybody. The doorman was told to be super nice and cordial to everybody. And what they observed was that the people who were given the test that included the negative words were much more likely to grab more than one piece of candy on the way out, be rude to the receptionist, and ignore the doorman. I mean, they did this over and over and over again. And so they also included like what their purchases and stuff would be like, what their instinct, right? Like they were more self-preservational. They were greedy, right? They wanted to take more. They wanted to consume more. They wanted to disregard people, like, or regard people less. They othered people faster. And you got to think, like, we know that Google has come out and said, like, hey, look, like, we cater the searches. But what about the articles themselves? Could there be 2 or more different versions of every article that you read and you don't know it? Could it just include subtle words that are just part of sentence programs, like MK Ultra style stuff, where, like, you would never know that this word was replaced with that word and this, you know what I mean? Like, and not, I don't mean like major articles like in New York Times, but other things we read. The ads that pop up that we're not really looking at. Could those ads actually not be advertising a real product, but could they be a platform to deliver this type of like programming? And I think 100%. That's what I mean, that's what I think. And so, yeah, we gotta really have a serious conversation about free will in the digital world, because we're having science being weaponized against us that we don't even know about.
I mean, it also makes you wonder what we can be programmed to do. Like, what can people, if you know somebody's like desires and wants and things, it doesn't seem ridiculous that you could say you had someone that was really low on money, like that was in a awful place financially, owed a load of stuff. And let's say you want this guy. You could either use this guy to get rid of someone you don't want around, or you could use those things to get rid of him because you don't want him around. I wonder how much nudging they would need to force them into doing something, because you know that much about them. There's I don't know if you've.
Good point.
I don't know if have you heard of Darren Brown? Has he made it as far as the US?
I love Darren Brown. He's a very interesting guy. I've seen him do things that I was like, it made me realize what people.
So malleable.
Yes.
And it's the one that always jumps out to me was the one where, just using simple suggestions, he convinced somebody to go and rob a bank.
Oh, I forgot about that. About that.
He's good.
We will skirt around things that will get us in YouTube trouble, but we have a lot of people that do some pretty crazy things that seem out of character.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's beyond the realm of possibility that those people are being targeted to do those things.
I don't think that it's beyond the realm of believability either. I agree with you, Lee. I think that the power of suggestion is very strong, and the vulnerability that we have as a society is very high. It's probably never been higher, because our interactions with the digital, with things around us are so high. We could be given suggestions all the time. And I think we all recognize that, because I mean, I'm sure I'm in similar company here where, like, at some point you just stopped watching TV, right? And you know people that didn't, right? For me, I mean, it was like the era of the very first American Idol, right? Like, I remember people were talking about it, and I just started a band or something like that. So I had no fucking clue, like, what was going on in the real world anymore. After that, totally detached. That's what I did on the weekends. That's what I did after school. I was listening to music, or I was playing music, and it removed me from the, like, must see TV Thursday night, Friends. Like, it removed me from it. And like,
it's what happened to me during COVID. That I got rid of television during COVID because I couldn't be bothered listening to it anymore.
Yeah, I've had rid of it for years.
And so you'd notice, like, when you bring up certain topics around people who watch TV all the time, it almost sounds like they're running a script.
I agree.
And I'm not trying to other people who watch TV. I mean, everyone's parents is still pretty plugged into those things, or grandparents, right? Like,
Stranger Things is ace. I'm definitely going to watch Stranger Things this season 5.
Oh yeah. There are some there are some things I'm on, right? Like, dude, I just finished the first season of Severance. I don't know if you guys have seen that show, but I can't recommend it any higher. It was beautifully done. But yeah, there's these things that happen, and I feel like they're a bit of programming. I mean, I want to talk more about Darren Brown. I'm glad you guys know about that guy. I watched this guy pay for a Rolex with paper one time, like blank pieces of paper.
It's crazy.
And then I didn't know what I was watching, right? I'm like, okay, whatever. Because I started watching it. I didn't know anything about Darren Brown, and the internet was crazy with hoaxes all the time, right? So when he's doing these, like, I'm on the street and I'm doing this, you never know if there's edits or if there's an actor hired. But then I was working retail, and I was in the back doing something, and there was one of the cashiers came in the back and was like, I think I just got shortchanged, quick changed. And I go, what the hell is that? And then she walked me through it, and then my manager walked me through it. And in my mind, I'm like, no way. You know what I mean? Like, and then I watched it happen a week later. I just watched it. And people's brains, like in the moment, if you flood a person with questions, and then you provide a bunch of different figures for them to like mentally place in 3D space or in, you know, in some chronological order, anything, they get so flustered. And then if you stare at them in their eye and you act assertive, then like they will be, because they're in a state of being flustered, their mind goes back to like being an animal or like a tribe. And then the first instinct for every human being in that state is to look around you and then do what everyone is either doing or expects you to do. So that's like, there's experiments to back that up too. So I watched my cashier like get confused, because he was like, oh, actually, can I pay with this? And let me just pay with, actually, you know, I'm going to give you 2 20s. And then I was watching it happen. And then she got confused. And then he got very like calm and very like, oh, no, we just do this. And then that was her way out from a like a very confusing, stressful situation. And so she just took it without even thinking, like, okay, yeah, for sure, that's what we're going to do. And then the guy walked away, and I stopped him, and then it was a whole thing. But I was like, that was to watch it happen in real life, because I thought that only Darren Brown could pull that off. You know what I mean? But like, people we're so susceptible to societal pressures, and then to like these mental tricks, and you combine a bunch of different ones, and then it's like, we're very easily tricked into stuff. But one other thing I saw Darren Brown do was he organized like an ad thing. Basically, he grabbed a bunch of random people. These were volunteers. He drove them all through the town or through London on the way to an ad agency, and then they were supposed to come up with an ad. And there was 3 different teams of 2 people, I think, or maybe just 3 different people, and they were all driven to the ad agency in separate limos at different times. And then they got there, and then they came up with their ads independent. They couldn't see what each other were working on, and the ad that they all came up with was the same ad. Like they all had like the same mascot, they had the same idea, right? It was just drawn a little differently, but it was very specific, like an elephant playing a harp at the gates of heaven, like something very specific, right? Yeah. And every team had the exact same one, and he showed how he did that, right? Where how he did it was the suggestion. The car ride on the way to the agency was all scripted, and different things were happening. Different kids were walking by. They were all holding different like signs, and like at the intersection there were these like sandwich boards. There was all of these scripted events that took place on the way to the agency that forced an idea to form in the heads of every single person that was just passively in the car, barely paying attention. You know what I mean? And they were all hints at this exact design. And then Darren Brown revealed like, yo, like I have the same design here on this piece of paper, and it's because of this. And that blew my mind. Again, on your way from, let's say like you're on Twitter or something, right? And you're going from like comment to comment, you're scrolling. That scroll is an adventure, right? On the stuff on the right-hand side, that's like you're barely looking at, you know, like the stuff that the ads that go by, you're barely looking at. Like that's a chronological order of events, and anything could happen in those events that could create a result and a reaction. And I for one think that AI has been doing this for probably close to 6 or 7 years, and like on to every single person. I would imagine that by now, like every person has their own personal AI through Google or through something else, and that AI is monitoring them and watching them. And if you think that's far-fetched, TikTok does that. Every single TikTok user has their own private AI that algorithm is constantly working for it's watching everything they're doing on other apps too. And so, like, you know, they revealed that in, like, as a company, that every person has their own AI bot, AI agent, that's catering their feed so meticulously, and that's how the app just blew up.
Yeah, it's a scary world, and you know, it's just going to get more prevalent and more invasive. And as the crazy thing is, us as content creators, we need to use these things as well. Otherwise, we will end up being like irrelevant with it. But we've nearly been going 2 hours now. I think it's been really good fun. It's always great to have you on Tube.
Oh, I love talking to you guys.
What have you got coming up?
We got Skyfire News every week. Me and Red Panda still grinding at that. I have a documentary I've been working on. I thought it was going to be like a short little video. It just grew and grew. So I'm still working on that. I just finished a huge chunk of it, and so like I'm looking forward to releasing that within the next like week or two. And that's on a lot of the stuff we talked about today. It's like on angels and aliens. When people like Tucker Carlson talk about it, what is he talking about? As a non-religious person, I have no Catholic background. I have no background in what an angel is. So I wanted to give like a complete rundown on who's talking about it, why they're saying it, how it relates to UFOs, and the, you know, describing, you know, like exactly what, you know, like what the classification of angels are and stuff. I'm hyped on it. So I just finished like the motion graphics, which is like the animations of all the things that could help. So, because you got to provide some visual to this stuff, otherwise you're just saying a bunch of words. But yeah, I'm excited. I'm very excited about that finally wrapping up. Yeah, and yeah, I did the UFO log. Pumped, super jazzed about that. So my UFO theory or spaces or whatever won that. So I'm still pumped. And then I think Red and I want to interview all the contestants and get them on our stream and like talk about, like, you know, what we thought about, like, basically more about UFO theories. You know what I mean? If with like a round table kind of vibe, people can talk about different aspects of the phenomenon.
That'd be good.
You know what I mean? Like what kind of answers we have, what we should be looking for, what does the next, like, you know, 5 years look like, and what, you know, what do we all want to do as like different spaces hosts and podcast hosts and stuff like that. So yeah, hopefully more community stuff coming up.
It's always a pleasure, mate. Always. And next time we need to get Red on as well with you.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. That guy's so busy, dude. Like, we're all working on like our own little private like videos. We have so much stuff to do with Skyfire, but like if we can get on here, we would absolutely love it. And then we would love to have you guys on Skyfire.
100%.
We'd love to. You just give us a shout and we'll be there. For us, we'll be back to our regular schedule now. You can find all the links down below in the description. And I'm going to run the podcast really quickly so we can use our AI tool to pull clips off it. And we can't do that if it goes over 2 hours. So thanks, everybody, for listening. And we will see you later. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.